No, because I'm joined by Dr. Darlene Harris, pediatrician. As mentioned earlier, the prevalence of overweight babies, toddlers, and preschoolers, Trinidad and Tobago ranks 9th in the world. In fact, roughly 13.9% of 12,600 children under 5 years old are overweight here in TNT. The data, however, is a bit skewed. So we'll get into that conversation as I welcome Dr. Harris. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so glad to be here because this is a very hot topic that we need to discuss. So let's get into it.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Harris, for joining me. Could we jump to accurate conclusions, knowing that approximately 42 countries did not submit data to the World Health Organization, and so it's very hard to actually say with confidence that TNT is indeed 9th in the world?
And then what I would say is that 42 countries out of the many that we have in this world, yes, it might be a little bit of a drop in the bucket. But what I would say is that we need to focus on the bigger picture where, alarmingly, globally, the rate of obesity amongst toddlers and preschoolers have increased drastically. And Trinidad is guilty of that, in that we are seeing greater number of children in the preschool, primary school age group who are overweight, leading into obesity, and that has been alarming across the nation amongst the pediatricians. So yes, we may have missed the top 10 if we include the other 42 nations, but we can't run from the fact that obesity and overweight children are on the rise.
So let's just actually get some definitions out of the way so that we understand. Childhood obesity versus a child being overweight. Precisely what is the difference? Is there a difference at all?
So first of all, when we talk about being overweight and obese, a lot of us focus on the weight of the child. But really and truly, what you have to look at is growth, which is both weight and height. And then you work out what is known as your body mass index. And that then is usually the indication for being overweight or obese. Is overweight and obesity two separate entities? Yes and no. What I would say is one is a precursor for the other. Overweight may be less of the two, but definitely one leads into the other. So what I tell parents, if you want to get scientific in terms of definitions, the World Health Organization has what we call growth charts. And these are based on what we call Z-scores, and we look at statistically standard deviations. So when we talk about being overweight is usually when you're 2 standard deviations above the norm, and obesity is when you are 3 standard deviations above the norm. So as I said earlier, one is more like a precursor to the other, where overweight is a precursor and can lead to obesity if we don't stop it in its tracks. So what I would say is that one is more of a precursor to the other. But yes, being overweight is the lesser of the two evils, if you want to look at it like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, another term that was actually often stated in the report was malnutrition. Precisely what is malnutrition, especially in the context of this conversation?
So malnutrition is the flip side, where overweight obesity is where you're above the top, and malnutrition is where you're below. So again, malnutrition is not based on weight. I think we will look at malnutrition, overweight, obesity just based on the weight of the child. But in truth and in fact, you have to look both at weight as well as height. So similarly, based on growth, it's below. So when we look at malnutrition, we look at what we call wasting. So you have what you call wasting and severe wasting, which similarly is where you have deviations below the norm.
Are vital pathways to good nutrition under threat to the extent that the possibilities of malnutrition becoming more and more prevalent, and obesity and a child being overweight is also becoming more and more prevalent? The statistics suggest yes, but vital pathways to nutrition, is that under threat?
I would say yes and no. I think a lot of it has to do with how life has evolved and how society has evolved. So the thing is, we have being malnourished as well as overweight and obesity. What I would say is the two ends of the spectrum. Yes, we have a large proportion of children within normal range, but we cannot leave those on the either ends behind. What I would say is that there's disparities in terms of lifestyle choices, in terms of what we eat, availability of food, and things like that. And if we could narrow the gap on those ends, I think we would have more of these children on either end of the spectrum approaching the normal ranges. And that is what we need to focus on as a society. How do we bring these children to the normal range so that everyone has their best shot? Because you have to remember that nutrition also affects their development. It affects their cognitive thinking. It affects how they grow, how they learn, how they perform in schools, both on either end, being malnourished as well as being overweight. So again, it's not just about what they eat, but it affects their whole life and moving forward, even into adulthood.
So then, what you're suggesting is that there needs to be an improvement in the practice and policy around nutrition.
Definitely, we need to look at it and find out where we're dropping the ball. Where can we fill those gaps? For example, what I would say with being overweight and obesity, it's lifestyle choices. Because before, I'm sure when you and I grew up, we were outside, we were playing, we were climbing trees, we were in the park. But now we have what we call the screen times, replacing those times. So where these children will be outside and having physical activity and exercising, we have less of that as a people now. And not just for Trinidad, but globally. And one of the things that they looked at, even during the COVID period, was the increasing and alarming rates of overweight and obesity amongst children. And when you looked at it, it's because they weren't outside, they weren't engaging in physical activity. So what I tell a lot of my parents who come through my practice, who are on either end, we need to make changes as a family. We cannot expect these children to eat a salad when we eat in KFC. So it's all about a mindset shift as well as lifestyle modifications on either end.
Okay, so that, what you just mentioned there is absolutely crucial. I'll tell you why. We're speaking about children, we're speaking about toddlers, we're speaking about preschoolers who, are helpless. They actually seek the guidance of the adults, obviously, in terms of daily living. So part of the problem that needs to be addressed is that nutrition education with parents and guardians.
Definitely. What I think is that we need to focus on giving these parents the right tools. Because what I would say is that children, usually infants, start eating solids at 6 months, right? And that is international guidelines. And I think a lot of these parents, when you talk to them, they're not sure, they're unsure in terms of what do we give them? How do we train our children to eat right? And I think that is where it comes in, where we need to focus on the parents, where we need to equip them with the tools to make the right choices. And I will say, being a parent myself, the right choices are difficult. It's easier to put some fries and chicken in an air fryer rather than, steaming some vegetables. But we need to let parents know of the ramifications of doing these things. Similarly, what I would say is that what we've noticed as pediatricians is that there's increasing intake of sugar among the preschool age group. So usually, like I tell my parents, you don't give juice. If you don't have juice in the house or we don't make the juice, they don't know what juice is, right? And then the thing about it is, as they get older and they go into primary school, they are exposed to certain things. But because they all they know would be water, they learn to say no and they learn to be okay with just water or one juice box a day. But it's about the choices we make for them, as well as the snack choices. We think that they can eat any and everything, but no, we need to make better choices in terms of what we pack in their lunch kits. I must applaud a lot of the preschools because they are trying, where their policies are no snacks, only fruits. And these are things that we need to implement across the board so that we can take back our children from these rates of overweight and obesity before they reach to out of control. Because what I'm saying is that if it is they are overweight and obese at 5, what's going to happen when they reach 10? And then it's very scary to even think what will happen when they reach 18 into adulthood. And if it is we continue with this trend, what we're going to find is that in 15, 20 years from now, we're going to have overweight and obese adults.
Yes.
Which is also on the rise, by the way. But it's something that we definitely need to look at. And it's what I tell people, it's an investment into the future. Because having healthy children now means we're going to have healthy adults. And the alarming increasing rates of hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, you're seeing these things in our kids at 10, at 12, and we need to take a step back and say, okay, how can we arrest this from continuing? And it starts at the home. It starts with us adults guiding these children along to make proper nutrition choices.
Dr. Harris, you just mentioned something that, has taken me aback a bit. Are we seeing the increased prevalence of diabetes and even heart disease in young adults, in children and young adults?
I don't have the actual statistical information, but yes, we actually are seeing a lot of children, presenting to us with small traces of hypertension, even the diabetes. You're seeing early signs of diabetes among our adolescent population. And one of the key factors will be weight. A lot of them are on the heavier side. And, we tell parents that, okay, we need to bring it back now so that it does not progress into that. Because when we progress into that, you're adding other factors to the domain where now we have to treat diabetes, and prevention is always better than cure. So it's better we try to prevent the progress and make the necessary changes now rather than having to play catch up later on.
So then there's also a psychological component when we're speaking about nutrition education, because you just mentioned from a very young age, what you feed your child or those influences are what they would actually go with as they tend to grow. Yeah, so the psychological aspect, the psychological component of food as well, is a very important part of discussing one's lifestyle.
Definitely, I would say the psychological component is the key, because the thing about it is, children at this stage, the preschool stage, their minds are like sponge. They take in what we put in. So if it is, we emphasize, eat your fruits, eat your veggies, come, let's go outside and exercise, put down the tablet. They then inculcate that into their living. And you see it. You see the children who eat right in primary school. You see the ones who are involved in the extracurricular activities. It's because their parents stress that. So I think it's important that we try to inculcate it. And I tell a lot of parents, you have to make the shift as a family. You cannot expect these children to do it alone. Mm-hmm. And I think even for us, we all need that shift, because we all are guilty of it, and if that shift is made as a family and the family takes on better lifestyle choices, in the end, in the long run, it not only benefits that child, but it benefits everybody else in the household. And what I tell parents, I know the challenges. I've had a picky eater. I've had a child who only eats mac and cheese, right? And I know the frustration, because, parents will say, but doc, they don't eat it. But what I would say is that we sometimes have to think outside the box. And we have to work with the child. We have to be patient with them. They are at the stages where they're exploring their environment, and the soft drink looks more exciting than water, because just the thought of color alone blows their mind, right? So things like that. If it is, instead of water, you make a smoothie and you add the fruits and blend it up and let them be part and involved in it. I tell parents, make a popsicle out of fruits, and they're like, make a popsicle. But yeah, you blend up your fruits, you get the little molds, and you make a popsicle, and they will be so excited by that.
Dr. Harris, it's very good what you're saying, and I could appreciate the advice. But there's another component of which we're probably, I wouldn't say ignoring, but forgetting, the financial flexibility of households to provide healthy nutrition, not only for themselves, but for their children.
I totally agree with you on that, because they actually have research articles that says that one of the reasons why we're seeing the alarming rates of overweight and obese children is because the unhealthy foods are cheaper than the healthier ones. And how can we argue that, where the economic strains a lot of parents are placed on makes it challenging to eat healthy? But what I would say is two things. One, grow food, right? And it's easier said than done, because I will tell you, I don't have a green thumb. But it's an option where a lot of the things that we can grow ourselves that are in our backyard, we can use, right? That is one. And then two, make the snacks. I remember when my daughter was 3, and again, picky eater, and again, I'm not a cook. But what I did is that Pinterest and Google, and we made plantain chips. She may not have eaten all, but we used stuff that we had to make these choices. And yes, we're talking about economic strain, but water is free, right? Something as simple as drinking water is something that needs to be changed. It needs to be adjusted. Where, believe it or not, a lot of our kids don't drink water. They will drink juice, they will drink soft drink. But if you don't buy it and you save that money and you give your kids water, it's money in your pocket at the end of the day.
No, I understand that, sir. But at the same time, Dr. Harris, when you go to the grocery and a large bag of snacks is $25, whilst a head of broccoli could be the same price, households are always going to say, all right, you know what, I can get multiple snacks for 2 children as compared to 1 head of broccoli. I agree with you, but that is something that I think we need to address as well. But
Thanks to
just moving on now to the interview, the other part of it as well is parents tend to connect different foods to different moods. For example, if you do good, we're going to give you ice cream. If you do bad, you've got to sit down and eat all your vegetables. Is that too? I mean, I know we spoke about the psychological part of it, but connecting foods to moods, does that contribute to what we're discussing this morning?
But I think so. I think that is something that we do even as adults, where, when we're sad or when it is, we are depressed, we sit down with a bowl of ice cream. We see it on the TV a lot, and simple, where we use food as rewards for things that are good, and we use the unhealthy foods as a reward. Whereas, we paint this negative picture around the healthy foods. And what I would say is that to change that will be a little difficult. But what we can do is change the mindset on healthy foods. So instead of seeing healthy foods as a negative thing, let's make healthy foods a positive thing. Let's not look at eating that bowl of broccoli as a oh my gosh task, but to be like, okay, cool, broccoli is not bad, it tastes good. And what I tell parents is all about presentation. You see, presentation to a child, very important. Children they tap into their senses. So they're very visual. So how you present the vegetable or how you present the fruit on the plate is important. People think it's not, but it actually is. And simple things like cutting up watermelon or cutting up apples in their favorite shapes and all of these things make a difference and changes that mindset and makes food seem exciting, simple things as making a smoothie and, associating the smoothie as a drink that they're superhero drinks. All these things make a difference to a 5-year-old child,
Sitting together and having dinner with a family, sitting together as a family and having dinner could also, be a positive impact, and maybe it's something that we need to consider. We need to start doing more. I know you mentioned the screen time. Everybody looks forward to now just coming home and sitting in front of television and eating dinner.
Exactly. And of course, I always say we need to hold on to our traditions. I remember growing up where Sunday lunch, we make a big spread on the table and we sit down as a family. And I tell a lot of my parents that as well, that besides what is on their plate, their habits, their eating habits are very important. And simple things as seeing your parents eating these things will be motivation for them, right? Putting down the tablet, putting down the phone, having a conversation while you're eating, also very important. And anything about it is that these children are extremely bright. This generation that we have coming up, their brains are moving faster than ours when we were their age. And explaining to them the reasons why also is important, because they now can take their health take their health as their own responsibility, and they would be like, okay, I want to be healthy, I want to grow up to be strong like daddy, so let me eat my broccoli. I want my skin to glow like mommy, so let me eat my fruits. So even that level of motivation and seeing us do it, but also explaining to them why is it important, is also a good idea. It's also helped them now to make proper choices.
Dr. Harris, we're more or less out of time, but I have to squeeze this question in very quickly. In terms of actually the healthcare system and the burden on the healthcare system, these statistics are quite alarming. What does it mean for the future of TNT's healthcare system? I know you mentioned earlier what it means for the adult population, but by extension, what does it mean for our healthcare system and the costs associated with this burden?
Well, what I would say is it's more work for us. But besides that, if we do not jump on this now, it's going to be a problem later on. The burden is going to increase. We're seeing our health centers and our clinics bursting at the seams with a lot of adults, as well as young adults, old adults with hypertension, the diabetes, the heart disease. And then besides just that, you don't want that these conditions lead to death, because heart disease, heart attack, high cholesterol, all these things are precursors for other deadly conditions, So we need to take a step back and see how can we stop this. But again, the burden is going to be great, because we're talking about thousands and thousands of persons going into this. And and if we don't put an end to it now, this rate is going to increase.
Yeah, certainly. Dr. Harris, thank you very much for joining me on AM Prime this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been a pleasure having this conversation with you. And as you mentioned, one of the biggest things we can do is back to basics.
Back to basics.
Back to basics.
Let's go back to the good old days,
I hope
let's
so.
see.
I hope so. Dr. Harris, take care and keep well. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you so much, and you guys have a great day.
You too. Take care. Dr.
All
Darlene
my kids
Harris.
out there, have a great day.
Yes, kids. I hope you were listening this morning as you were getting ready for school. Well, listen to the doctor. You might not want to listen to mom and dad, but hopefully listen to the doctor. But Dr. Darlene Harris, pediatrician, the prevalence of overweight babies, toddlers, and preschoolers, Trinidad and Tobago ranks 9th in the world. Again, just bear in mind that 42 countries did not submit data, but still, it's an alarming figure. Ladies and gentlemen, we take a break here on AM Prime. When we return, we'll welcome our second guest this morning. Stay tuned.